Pete Golding told you everything about this program by what he didn't say.
You are Locked On Ole Miss, your daily podcast on the Ole Miss Rebels, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm Steven Willis. Pete Golding told you everything you need to know about this Ole Miss football program, and he didn't even have to say it out loud for everybody to get the picture today. Because when he talked about his influences, he left one name out, and that tells you exactly where he sees Ole Miss and this program as a whole after the playoff run in January. And when you combine that with what this offense is becoming, we're going to talk about that. Daryl Gill is having a great camp, more explosive because of him. And the type of games that Ole Miss is getting ready to host, we'll talk about the LSU Ole Miss game this season as well, starting to feel a little bit different. We're going to break all of that down, but we start with Golding leaving out Lane Kiffin when naming his influences, and I think that was a legitimate shot over the last November and December. Now, so let's just back this up real quick for a second. In November, let's go back to the field of Oklahoma. This is some rumors. Everybody likes rumors. These are some rumors. Apparently, after the game in Norman, Oklahoma, Lane Kiffin approached Pete Golding and made a joke about them going to Florida together, because at that point, Lane was going to Florida. He wasn't going, he didn't know where he was going. He just didn't know he didn't think he was going to be at Ole Miss anymore. So he made a comment to Pete Golding. He's like, "Are you ready for Gainesville?" or something like that. And Pete Golding was like, "I'm not going anywhere. I mean, have fun with it. You do whatever you have to do. I'm not leaving." Because it's important to remember about this Pete Golding situation with Lane Kiffin and their relationship. It's a coincidence. It isn't a situation that Lane wanted him. It isn't a situation where Pete wanted Lane. It wasn't a situation where Pete wanted to leave Nick Saban and Alabama. It was a pure coincidence because Pete Golding, for family reasons, wanted to move back to Mississippi and be a little bit closer about what's going on. That is a real thing that happened. The second rumor that happened over the course of this, and this was during the Mississippi State stuff, to where Lane Kiffin was watching a football game or something that Saturday night, and Pete Golding found his way allegedly up to the head coach's office and said, "You need to get out of here. This isn't your office anymore." And that story endears him to every single Ole Miss fans, but that kind of lets you know what's going on. So the reason I bring that up, is there real animosity between the two? Is there something more than what we know going on? Because from Pete's perspective, I would imagine Lane completely tried to sabotage a season the year after Pete said himself the coaches sabotaged the season. So it's back-to-back years that Pete Golding almost didn't go to the playoffs because of coaches sabotaging the season. So that is interesting. So what you leave out of questions like this, it usually tells the real story. And this is what I mean. There was a question in the press conference on Tuesday to where Pete Golding was asked about his influences. And they mentioned Ron Roberts, they mentioned Nick Saban, and they mentioned Lane Kiffin in the question, like directly in the question. Pete Golding went on a long rant about Ron Roberts and how he taught him how to be a defensive football coach and the lessons that he learned from Ron Roberts. And then he spent an increasingly long time on Nick Saban, as he should. I mean, he's the GOAT for a reason. I mean, Ole Miss fans might be mad at him because of his CAA stunt that he pulled back in November and December, but he still is a really good football coach that had a lot of great lessons that he could impart on everybody. Going into different meetings, the way he runs the programs, the uptick of the player personnel department, all of that stuff. Pete Golding got to see all of that. And he talked about it, is really fired up. And Pete Golding immediately said after he was asked the question, when Lane Kiffin was the last name that was mentioned in the question, he mentioned binders. He said he carried 2 binders when he was coming up through coaching. There was a because of binder and there was an in spite of binder. And it feels like this was a little bit of a shot. The because of is it affects winning. Everything there is stuff that you do that makes you win ball games if you do them correctly. In spite of is games that you're winning in spite of all of this stuff, like the stupid basketball goal that got taken down in the team room and on the sideline and all that. It was about affecting winning. So it was interesting to me. I think all of this was intentional. It's about identity, and it's about what Pete Golding wants this Ole Miss football team to look like moving forward. This whole thing wasn't about disrespect. I do hope that everybody understands that. It's one of those situations, but it's not necessarily about disrespect. It's about direction and how everything is going to change. So here's where it gets interesting. Ole Miss's main branding philosophy over the last 5 years has been fun. Everything's about fun, dunking on the sideline, all of that stuff. It's been all about fun. I think now it's going to move from personality, the personality of Lane Kiffin, to structure. And in that way, it looks a lot like the GOAT, Nick Saban, as far as structuring his program. From offense first to balanced. From Lane Kiffin to Pete Golding, honestly, is going from Lane's program to Pete's system. So let's flip this for a second. I like to compare this Ole Miss team to early Deshaun Watson teams at Clemson way back about 2013 or something like that. Whenever they were just about to make it, they were almost there. You just need to take that next step. And it makes sense because the way you do it is by playing complementary football, because it wasn't long ago. It really, honestly, was not long ago that I was getting phone calls from Jake Crane from Crane and Comb. When I was getting phone calls from other national hosts, Drake Toll from Westwood One calling in. It's like, is this the year? This offense is great. Is this the year that they learn how to play complementary football? You always heard that. And I was like, I don't know, because every year you would sign 8 wide receivers. Everything was all in on the offense, and there were scraps left over for the defense. But that started to change a little bit. 2024 was an abject disaster. There's rumors all about that and what went on there and stuff like that. Ole Miss had no business in the Gator Bowl that year. They had the second best roster in all of college football, and they found a way to lose twice as double-digit favorites. But starting with 2024, that was a defensive team. They had some explosive players on offense, but when Trey Harris got injured, when they had no running back, that was a defensive team. They had to overcome the errors on the offensive side of the ball, which maybe gave Pete Golding confidence about what they could become, because Golding, of course, his DNA is defense. This program now kind of reflects that, because this early part of spring practice, we're talking about linebackers and the defensive line and the front seven, and the secondary is coming along. And we're going to talk in the next segment about some of the offensive stuff. And it might just be because John David Baker hasn't spoken to the media yet. But the way it sits right now feels like the defense has more of an elevated role about what goes on. Ole Miss isn't trying to be flashy anymore. It's trying to be complete. And that is a pretty cool feeling. I mean, do you like this direction better than the Kiffin era style? Let me know down in the comments below of where you think Ole Miss is going. Thanks again for watching the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, the most watched Ole Miss podcast out there. Is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Before we get into the offense, let me tell you about one of the partners of the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Hey, the NBA playoffs are here, where every possession matters, every matchup is magnified, and every game can swing a series. And right now, FanDuel is giving new customers a great way to get in on the action. Here's what I like about it. You can bet just $5 and get $250 in bonus bets if that first bet wins. This app is super easy to follow the action with player stats, trends, and matchups all in one place. And during the playoffs, that extra insight really kind of matters when you're looking at stars, role players, and key moments. It just makes the entire playoff experience more engaging from start to finish. Also, according to FanDuel, Trinidad Chambliss is number 3 as far as betting favorite goes to win the Heisman Trophy. Ole Miss is currently at 22-1 to win the national championship. And you can also get the over-under number is at 7.5 points. That kind of feels like free money to hit the over. So I'm really intrigued with that. But Ole Miss fans have a lot of engagement that they can get through FanDuel. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. FanDuel, play your game. Hey, do us a favor, like, subscribe, and comment on the video. Subscribe to the podcast on whichever audio podcatcher you listen to and give it a 5-star review. It costs nothing, but it keeps all of this free. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free with the Everydayer Club, plus members-only Discord access. Join at lockedonolemist.supercast.com. You get access to our newsletter, all of that stuff. If you want expanded Locked On Ole Miss coverage, it is right there. Mike Huseman, Dalen Flowers, Corey Burton only work on the Everydayer Club side of things. Everything else is just me. But that is where we're sitting right now. So this offense might not just be good. It might be really dangerous. And let me tell you what I mean. Ole Miss offensively, we talked about Jonte Cook being the ceiling raiser of this offense. Listen, you have the number 1 quarterback in all of college football. You have the number 1 running back in all of college football. That's the baseline. That's the starting point. So what becomes is, how do you maximize those two players? And they asked Pete Golding about what he needed to do and what he wanted to do offensively. And with Trinidad and with Kewan Lacy being where they are, the wide receiver position comes into real focus. Now, first of all, you need a couple of jets on the outside. Deuce Alexander is a machine. He looks pretty good in that number 1 jersey. I'm not even going to lie. But the second receiver that is emerging right now is wide receiver Daryl Gill, the transfer from Syracuse. He had like 30 catches, 500 yards, had 5 touchdowns a year ago for the Orange. He is a burner. He's also 6'3". He made it on Monday Night Football's You Got Mossed. He is an elite player. So the question is going to become for Ole Miss, if the way it looks, I hit my little birds that are around practice, like, who is the top 3 wide receivers right now? And you're hearing a lot of stuff about Caleb Cunningham. Caleb Cunningham, surprisingly to me, was not mentioned. That doesn't mean that he's not there. That just means he wasn't mentioned in that text. But he said the first 3 right now are Daryl Gill, Jonte Cook, and Deuce Alexander, which in that case, the big wide receiver, the one that is going to be asked to make tough catches, that is going to be asked to have the body position to hang what's going on, to be the Trey Harris, the Laquan Treadwell, the Dante Moncrief, is Daryl Gill Jr. Because we talked about Deuce Alexander all the time. And he is going to be a Dayton Wade type outside receiver, to where Ole Miss is kind of playing a dual slot system. You saw this in 2023. John David Baker was the co-offensive coordinator. There's no reason to think that that's not going to happen again. You're going to see a lot of mesh concepts. You're going to see them use their phone booth quickness and speed very, very fluidly. And when you have a running back such as Kewan Lacy and all that, it makes sense that you would do a lot of mesh concept stuff, some man beater type stuff to keep defenses from being able to press, because during the 2023 season, they used the engage 8 essentially, to where they were just sending 6, 7 people to try and get the ball out of the hand of Jackson Dart really quick. So with that happening, speed on the outside with Jonte Cook, with Deuce Alexander running mesh stuff just kind of makes sense. In 2023, Ole Miss beat LSU in Oxford. That was the Trey Harris mesh concept touchdown. That was Dayton Wade on a mesh concept touchdown. This is a system that we've seen before. But the question becomes how Ole Miss is going to use Daryl Gill. He's a burner. He can absolutely fly on the outside, and you're talking about being vertically a presence going into football. So this is where it gets interesting. The fit with having a burner on the outside in Daryl Gill Jr., the fit with Trinidad Chambliss, the fit with Kewan Lacy, because remember, it's about maximizing what those two can do. Those two are the best two players on the offense, or at least we think they are. Jonte Cook, Deuce Alexander, Daryl Gill, Horatio Fields, Caleb Cunningham, all those guys, they're not going to be furniture movers, but they're going to be close, because it's a soccer term that you hear when you watch games in Europe from time. Everybody can't be piano players. Some players have to be piano movers. And once you understand the role of what's going on, you can be a pretty good player and you can scheme around it. Now, we're going to get into the tight end situation a little bit later. Michael Smith, I think, is having a pretty good spring. Luke Haas, healthy as far as I know. And whenever you have Caleb Odom, he is the matchup problem that you're probably going to see a good bit. You might have a 10 personnel look of what's going on if Caleb Odom can put on a little bit of weight to just be a good enough blocker in the run game, because of what he can do is pretty special. The explosiveness of this offense. I told you, and I've said it for a month. This offense scored 30 points in 6 or 7 straight games. They might do 40 points this year. The explosiveness around this offense is going to be really impressive. We talked about the landmine yesterday that could get this offense with the right tackle position. That is the position that everybody needs to watch. But ideally, I do think that is going to be all right. They're going to figure that out. You have good players coming in and handling what is going on. But when you look at the outside of this offense, the speed vertically, the quickness on the inside, the ability to dual slot it, the ability to go big with tight ends and stack things on layers, this Ole Miss offense has a chance to be much more explosive than it was a year ago. Last year was pretty good. But remember, this is the thing that you need to remember going into last year. Trinidad Chambliss was good. He was 8th in the Heisman Trophy, running a retrofitted Austin Simmons offense. They found some stuff that worked. They were able to mash it together early on until you got comfortable with the game plan for Trinidad Chambliss, while he got comfortable going against SEC defenses, and you just had to kind of find your way through it. You're getting somebody in year 2 that should be ready to go. And you kind of expect the Baker Mayfield to come out in him. And because of that, the guys on the outside stretching, keeping safeties from being able to attack the running back, the quarterback run game that I think is going to be a much bigger part of this Ole Miss offense this season because of what Trinidad can do. Kewan Lacy is going to be Kewan Lacy, but you got a deep threat on the outside. You got the middle field being threatened. You basically have levels to where you have to pick your poison on defense. So the point is, this offense doesn't just move the ball. It stresses defenses. And it's not just good, it's dangerous. And when you look at what's going on, this Ole Miss team has a chance to be really, really special. Is this the most explosive offense that Ole Miss has had? Let me know down in the comments section below. Remember, we're free and available on all the podcast apps and on YouTube. And a special hello to our everydayers who make this show what it is, your team every day. Coming up, Ole Miss versus LSU, well, that might break records. All that coming up next.
I'm Clea Butler, host of Locked On Women's Basketball, and this is Mazda's Women's Basketball Snapshot, celebrating the work no highlight reel can ever capture. UCLA made history by winning its first NCAA Women's Basketball National Championship, dominating South Carolina 79-51. The Bruins controlled the game from start to finish with elite defense and balanced scoring, finishing the season 37-1. Star center Lauren Betts was named Most Outstanding Player, leading a team effort that capped a 31-game winning streak. Under head coach Corey Close, UCLA secured a landmark title that has been decades in the making. These moments are earned off the clock, those long before the lights ever come on. The sweat, the fakes, the doubt, the scrapes, I'm coming back for more every time. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins define the moment. Putting in the work, that defines you. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you.
You know, this game just isn't big. It's a moment. And the game I'm talking about is on September 19th against the LSU Tigers. It has a chance to be an absolute circus. And the tickets went on sale not too long ago, at least on Game Time, it's there. And I wanted to check and see exactly what it looked like. And yes, it's beyond ridiculous. When you look at some of the prices, the get-in price for that game in April, we're still 4 or 5 months ahead of that, is over $400 to get in for one ticket. This is going to be a tough ticket. And if you look at where those tickets are, and this is from our good friends at Game Time, their 3D view, you can see that these tickets are in the corners. These tickets are not high value tickets. If you get closer to the 50-yard line, you're talking about 4 figures to get into the game, a little bit over $1,000. And I think that Ole Miss and LSU are going to sell that out. Listen, that game will absolutely be a circus. It just will. You have rivalry, you have stakes, you have talent. And this might, because of that, this might be the hottest ticket that Ole Miss has ever had. Now, the one downside that I see in my mind is the fact that it's in September. Ole Miss playing LSU in September is weird. It's just weird to have it that early in the year. But LSU is going to come in with their fans. They're going to come with their confidence. They're going to come with George Hamilton as their head coach and desperately try to win a game that they know they have to win. They've written too many checks at this point to lose that ball game. So you're going to get a great effort from the LSU Tigers. The flip side is you have an Ole Miss fan base that feels scorned. I guess that's the right word for what's going on. And that is their first opportunity to take out some frustration on them. So, okay, whatever. But when it's happening in September, game day is likely going to be in town. I imagine they will do that. Set up on the Grove stage, broadcast all around, all of that. I expect game day to be in Oxford for that weekend. I think somebody told me rumor-wise that they reserved some rooms during that weekend. I don't think it's a great weekend of college football to begin with, but it is. And this is why it matters, okay? Program momentum. Ole Miss is coming off of a playoff. If Ole Miss wins that game, they've gotten through one of their 4 games that are going to be really difficult. They have LSU at home. They have Georgia at home. They go to Texas. They go to Oklahoma. Those are the 4 hardest games on Ole Miss's schedule. So winning the game against LSU would obviously eliminate one of those pieces. The other thing is playoff buzz. At that point, Ole Miss should be, if they win that game, 3-0. with a road trip at Florida that is an absolute landmine. There's 2 landmines on the schedule with the Florida Gators and the Auburn Tigers. We'll discuss those when we start doing W's and L's in Wednesday, or in July, I should say. But also fan base energy. The Ole Miss and LSU fan base, both of them, whoever wins this game is going to get a burst like they have jet fuel going. Now, LSU has to go to Texas A&M the next week. Ole Miss has Florida. It's difficult both ways for whichever team wins the game to come back. This is a mentally taxing game that could be a problem. But the fan base energy is going to be huge, and the game being in Oxford, that's great. I'm glad it's not in Tiger Stadium, if we're going to be honest. This game isn't just big. It's a moment. And what I mean by that is you're going to have games in the system to where you'll have numbers next to the name both teams. Like both teams are going to be top 10 teams by the time they play, likely, unless LSU loses to Clemson. Or Ole Miss loses to Louisville. So, I mean, big games are big games, but that game is special because of all the extra stuff around it. The fact that what I'm talking about you right now, and the fact that get-in prices are $400 in April, all of that's important because this game is a moment. A lot of people want to see what would happen whenever those two come back to Vaught-Hemingway Stadium. Tennessee had to wait like 10 years. There's a French's mustard bottle on the shelf. You can see it right over my shoulder. That happened in that game. That was 10 years later. What does it look like 1 year later? I'm curious to see what the atmosphere will be like. I 100% think that place is going to be absolutely rocking. And the same thing where Georgia and everybody had trouble moving the ball because of the atmosphere that Ole Miss has created. That is going to be brought in that game. And that is essentially the first home game, by the way. I know they play Charlotte the week before at home, but it's not going to be the same. Everybody is still going to have this game circled on their calendar. It'll be curious to see exactly how it goes. Is this the biggest game in Vaught-Hemingway history? Because it'll definitely be the biggest circus in Vaught-Hemingway history. And as always, tell me in the comments what you're seeing, because everydayers are usually ahead of the national media and everybody else on this stuff. You're not the smartest audience in all of ball for no reason. Thanks for tuning in today to the Locked On Ole Miss podcast. Before we get out of here, coming up tomorrow, we're going to talk about spring ball. We're going to talk about the basketball transfer portal. Coach Yo got a commitment yesterday from a Tennessee transfer. So congratulations to her. She's off to a good start. So we'll see what happens to take Ole Miss's programs from good to elite. So make sure you subscribe and follow the show so you get all the latest episodes. This is the Locked On Ole Miss podcast, and we're going to tell you what's really going on every single day, rain or shine. We're on all the social channels, so check that out as well. And if you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. Get Locked On Ole Miss ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonolemess.supercast.com to join the club. For those of you on video, we're going to send you on over to the first ever 24/7 National Locked On Podcast Network YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On College Football or Locked On SEC. Hotty toddy, everybody. Remember, getting close, April 20th, meet and greet, Velvet Ditch in Oxford. I'm coming. The Oxford tour stop will be there that week. There will be other dates and locations. If you can't make that one, pay attention to my social feed. I'll talk all about that. But as soon as I have the dates, I will give them to you as well. So take care. We'll talk to you later. And of course, hotty toddy.